She sold the only place that ever called me by name, and she did it while I was on a red-eye flight home. I am Nora Whitaker, 32, a project manager who color-codes grocery lists and keeps her shoes lined up like quiet soldiers. Order calms me. So did that narrow house on Ash Lane, with its lemon tree that scraped the kitchen window in the wind. I learned to braid my hair at that window. I learned, later, to breathe through grief there too. The text came as the plane dipped over the coast. From my mother, Elaine. No greeting, just a message that landed like gravel on enamel. House is under contract. You don't need to rush. I've moved my things to a friend's. One more line followed, a brittle ribbon on a broken gift. It's for the best. My father's funeral had been 3 months earlier. He was the glue in our brittle family. When he died, the air around us turned to dust that would not settle. Elaine and I tried to be kind and failed in small, precise ways. She found comfort in busy rooms and new voices, serving food that went untouched, telling stories that flinched away from facts. I found comfort in the yard, kneeling under the lemon tree with pruning shears, trying to tidy a sadness that refused to clip clean. Dad had loved that house like a living thing. He patched walls himself and labeled screws in baby food jars. He said a house remembers its people if you speak to it softly. I spoke to it the night before my flight, pressing my palm to the banister. I promised I would come back soon, that I would help Elaine list the little things he never finished. We would fix the screen door that snapped like a reprimand. We would touch up the paint in the hall where the light always hit thin. Instead, my phone screen showed a lock icon next to a message that changed everything. I looked out at the ocean, an endless gray that offered no surface. The flight attendant asked if I wanted water. I shook my head and pressed my fingertips to the cool plastic of the window, as if the house could feel that through cloud and time. At baggage claim, the carousel hummed and clicked. A child pointed at a suitcase with cartoon sharks, laughing. The sound made my chest ache. I called Elaine. It rang until a mechanical voice told me the mailbox was full. I tried again, then typed a message, "Why didn't you wait for me?" The dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. It was too much, Nora. Taxes. Upkeep. What would you have done? Another message followed, a shield raised after the blow. Please don't make this harder. I kept my voice level when I finally reached her. When is closing? Monday, she said, crisp, as if making a dental appointment. You can come see it Sunday. If you want. If I want. As if wanting had ever been the problem. I drove from the airport down streets whose names my mouth remembered even when my mind felt peeled back. The house sat in its usual posture, shoulders squared, paint a little tired. A for sale sign had been tilted sideways, a small indignity, and a red banner slashed across it, pending. I walked through the rooms and saw our lives like water stains. My father's measuring marks on the pantry door, our heights marching upward in pencil. The notch where a chair had once bit the baseboard during a birthday party. The kitchen window, the lemon tree, the light shaped like familiarity. And on the counter, a neat folder facing the door, as if expecting me. Offer, inspection, closing. I lifted the folder and felt something hard under it. The banister finial my father had been refinishing, smooth on one side, raw on the other. It fit in my palm like a thought that had not yet chosen its words. I slipped it into my bag and looked at the lemon tree, fluttering. That was when the first spark took, small and blue. I did not know its shape yet, only its temperature. When I left, I locked the door and pressed the key flat in my hand until it hurt. I would return it, because rules mattered. But I also carried away the shape of the hallway in my breath. The house had always spoken to me. Now it whispered something new, a syllable I could not yet hear, only feel. It sounded like a future turning quietly on its hinge. The weekend fell apart in measured pieces. Elaine refused breakfast, refused to sit, refused softness. She walked me through the house as if it were evidence of a case she had already won. "The roof needs replacing in 5 years," she said, tapping her nail against the inspection report. "The yard is too big for me alone." The taxes jumped again. "Your father's plans were sweet, but they were also unpaid." I nodded because facts are not arguments, and grief makes everyone a ledger. In the empty living room, our voices made a hollowness I had not asked for. Every sound bounced off the walls and came back thinner. "Who's buying it?" I asked. "A couple," she said. "Teachers. Do they love the lemon tree?" She blinked, as if the question had tugged on an invisible thread. "They said it was charming." The word stung. Charming was what you called a teacup with a crack you decided to forgive. That afternoon, I drove to the park where my father used to insist we go feed ducks with stale bread he saved in the freezer. I sat on a bench and watched a girl in a red coat practice backflips of courage near the swings. Everywhere I looked, families were negotiating invisible deals, making small compromises that would become their future. I felt the shape of our compromise hardening like plaster. Elaine wanted an exit. I wanted a promise kept. We met in the middle of a room no longer ours and pretended light was enough. Friends texted. "Come out tonight, you need a distraction." I went, out of habit more than desire. At a noisy restaurant, I smiled in the right spots and counted the seconds between laughter. My coworker Liam asked about arrangements, logistics, timelines. He was kind in a plain way, which always felt like a door you didn't notice until you needed it. "You okay?" he asked when the table wobbled and my glass trembled. "I will be," I said. "After Monday, I will know where the ground is." I slept at my hotel and dreamed about the lemon tree bending down to speak at my ear. In the morning, I walked past the house again before meeting Elaine for coffee. The for sale sign threw a long shadow on the grass. The lawn had gone shaggy. The screen door clacked once and then, in a surprising kindness, settled without the usual bite. I took that as a mercy, or maybe a memory choosing a better ending for itself. At the cafe, Elaine stirred her drink until the ice surrendered. She had lined her purse with the closing documents, every corner precise. "You'll still have your memories," she said, not as comfort but as verdict. "I wanted to make new ones," I replied. That was the point. She looked at the street past my shoulder, cataloging cars, avoiding mine. "Your father left debts," she said quietly. "Not large, but not small. The house sells, the numbers settle. I do not ask you for money." "You did not ask for my voice either," I said, softer still. She flinched, a small crack through a polished surface. Then she straightened. "I did what I could. I did what adults do." On Sunday evening, I packed my bag with the neat finial wrapped in a t-shirt, the inspection folder's photocopies, and my father's screwdriver, which I found under the sink behind a bottle of cleaner. I returned my key to my mother. It lay on her palm like a fossil, evidence of a life no longer animated by breath. Alone in my hotel room, I stood in the dark and let my breath match the slow pulse of the air conditioner. Quiet became a tool, cool and exact. My chest still hurt, but the pain had acquired edges, and edges, I knew from work, could be measured. I opened my laptop, opened a blank document, and gave the spark a name. If the house needed a guardian, I would become one. Not with noise, not with demands, but with precision. Monday would take a house from us. I would let it. And then, with the patience my father taught me when we sanded wood grain to silk, I would find my way back to it. I said it out loud, a contract with myself. I will bring it home, and I will invite her inside. On Monday, I wore navy and flats that did not pretend to be taller than they were. In the lobby of the title company, the air smelled like toner and new envelopes. A pot plant angled toward the window, stubborn and admirable. Elaine sat across from me with her real estate agent, Maureen, who had a clipboard and a smile that did not risk warmth. The buyers arrived, soft-spoken and nervous, hands linked under the table as if bracing for a gust. I watched the ritual unfold, papers slid, signatures gathered, keys weighed out in a small silver dish. It was polite, efficient, antiseptic. When it was done, the dish looked too empty for its role in our history. Elaine exhaled with relief that had an old bitterness under it. She hugged me, quick. "It's done," she said, as if closure were a single door. When they left, I asked the receptionist if I could have a copy of the recorded deed once it was available. She nodded, pragmatic. "We'll email a PDF by end of day," she said, the alphabet of our new reality. I met Liam for lunch at a quiet deli where the knives made a tidy percussion behind the counter. He listened while I described the ceremony of dismantling a life. "What will you do?" he asked, not as a challenge but as a bridge. "I don't know yet," I said, though the spark had begun to map itself. "But I'll learn the bones." He nodded as if I'd given him a test result he could accept. Back at the hotel, I opened the email when it arrived. There it was, the deed, my parents' names crossed out by process, the teachers' names typed where ours had lived for decades. I printed it, held the paper, felt the cool fact of it. Then I saw a detail I had not expected. The seller's mailing address for tax records was my mother's new friend's address, the place where she said she was staying temporarily. It tugged at a thread. She had arranged this swiftly, perhaps with help. The tax bill was modest, despite her panic about it. The debts were itemized, smaller than her fear. Questions clarified into tasks. I called my father's old neighbor, Mr. Singh, who used to lean over the fence and pass me fresh mint he clipped with a dramatic flourish. He answered on the second ring, his voice sounded softer by years. "Nora, beta," I heard. "I am sorry. Did Mom talk to you?" I asked. "She said the house was too heavy to carry alone," he said. I believed her, because grief is heavy. But I also saw the sign go up before your father's roses even dropped their last petals. It surprised me. "Can I ask a favor?" I said. "If I were to try to get it back someday, would you tell me if anything changed on the block, if the new owners put up another sign, even briefly?" "I will watch as if it were my own fence line," he said. "And if there is a lemon, I will taste it and tell you if it is still sweet." I also called Maureen, framing my curiosity as gratitude. "Thank you for handling everything for my mom," I said. "If you ever hear the new owners need to sell, please keep me in mind." She responded with a smooth line about confidentiality and equal footing, a way of closing doors while sounding like she opened windows. Still, after we hung up, an email pinged. A market report for the neighborhood, sent by her system, numbers dressed as courtesies. Data is rarely loyal, but it is honest. I saved it. Days became weeks. I returned to my city, to work, to emails with subject lines that could not guess the texture of my heart. Each morning I checked listings, just in case. I set an alert for the school district, for the street name, for the words, motivated seller. My phone became a lighthouse I carried everywhere. When the teachers posted photos of their new garden bed on a public account, I liked the picture without bitterness. People deserved to plant. I was not a thief. I was a steward choosing the time to arrive. 3 months later, a message came from Mr. Singh, short and bright. "There is a realtor's car outside. Same woman. Sign is still in the trunk." Another text followed, a photo taken from a respectful distance. The lemon tree glowed like a coin in the evening light. My breath found a new rhythm. Quiet did not mean waiting forever. It meant moving without rattling the glass. I flew in on a Thursday. The teachers had accepted a position overseas, a one-year program. They needed a quick sale. Maureen listed the house as turnkey with charm, the word again doing its small cruel work. There were already 2 offers, she told me on the phone, brisk. Investors who flipped houses like pancakes. I did not raise my voice. I let silence do the thing my father taught me, stretching space until honesty walked in by itself. I'm making an offer at asking, I said. No contingencies except the standard inspection, which I'll waive after a walkthrough. 35-day close. Cash. I had no cash. I had a pre-approved line of credit, a short bridge loan arranged by a careful banker who liked my spreadsheets. I had calculated down to the nail. Maureen paused, faintly impressed in a way she resented. I'll present it, she said. At the house, I stood again in the kitchen while the late sun turned the counter to warmed stone. The teachers had kept the lemon tree trimmed, respectful as renters in their own lives. I pressed my palm to the banister, the finial's absence a small ache. The inspector glanced at the attic, checked the outlets, clicked details into a report I would not read. My attention was elsewhere, on the crease where the hallway wall met the floor. My father used to kneel there, painting careful edges with a brush he called a whisperer. I thought about calling Elaine, telling her the shape of what I was doing. Instead, I slid my phone back into my pocket. The truth would arrive when it had a place to sit. By evening, Maureen called. You're in second, she said, clipped. The top offer is 20 over asking, no inspection, 2-week close. I'll match the number, I said plainly. I'll keep the 35-day close. I will also write a letter to the sellers explaining my connection. You may deliver it or not, as rules allow. But I will write it. You know that letters are discouraged, she said, ready with policy. I know, I said, that people sometimes read anyway. I wrote it at the hotel desk, under a lamp the color of motel forgiveness. I kept it short, calm, factual. I wrote about my father measuring our heights, about the lemon tree, about the banister I had promised myself to finish. I said I would honor what they had tended, that I would not bulldoze, that I understood what stewardship felt like when your hands were small and the job was not. I closed with the only leverage I respected. If you accept my offer, I will not negotiate for repairs. I will close on time. And I will send you a photo of the banister when it is done. The sellers accepted at noon the next day. Maureen's voice was flat with surprise, or annoyance at losing the efficient symmetry of the highest number. They preferred your terms, she said, as if the word preferred had been forced to reveal something intimate. We'll open escrow. I signed papers that day and the next. Numbers moved from screens into promises. The banker smiled without teeth. Liam sent a text with a confetti emoji that I did not know how to feel about. Mr. Singh left a small bag of mint on the hotel front desk with my name written in careful block letters. The world shifted by a degree, and the horizon landed where I could stand on it. At closing, Maureen slid the silver dish again into the center of the table. The teachers placed the keys into it with something like relief and something like grace. It's a good house, one of them said. It deserves a person. I'll try, I said, because promises are heavier when they are light. When the last page was signed, I asked the title officer for one more copy of the deed, this time with my name. She passed it across the table with the professional humility of someone who knows paper can summon tears without warning. I walked out carrying a manila envelope that felt like a small door. Outside, the air held the faint sweetness of lawn clippings. I called Elaine. She answered on the third ring. Nora. I bought the house, I said. I let the words rest without scaffolding. Silence stretched. I could hear, faintly, the sound of her breath sorting. You what? I made an offer, I said, steady. It was accepted. We close today. I'd like you to come to dinner tomorrow night. 6 o'clock. Are you trying to punish me? She asked. No, I said. I'm trying to set the table. She exhaled in a thin, tired ribbon. I don't know if I can. You can, I said. Bring the cedar box with Dad's tools. I think the banister should be finished. The line held still. Then she said, very quietly, 6 o'clock. We ended the call without goodbyes. Sometimes dignity is the absence of exit music. The next afternoon, I stood in the kitchen as water hissed into a pot. The lemon tree brushed the glass, making a sound like a page turning. The house felt both familiar and careful, as if asking if I still knew where the light switches were. At 5:58, the screen door clicked. Elaine stepped inside, holding the cedar box like something breakable. We did not hug. We moved, two careful planets, toward the table set for two with plates my father had chosen at a yard sale because they felt honest. We ate in measured bites, as if trying not to disturb a small animal between us. I had made roast chicken, potatoes that caught the edges of the pan just enough, and a salad of fennel and lemon. The house received the smells calmly, folding them into itself. For a long time we spoke of nothing that mattered. Weather, traffic, Mr. Singh's mint, the rasp of the screen door now somewhat gentled. The quiet between sentences was not hostile, only wary. After the plates were cleared, I brought the cedar box to the table. I set the unfinished finial beside it, wood soft where my father had left it. Elaine's face shifted in a way I recognized from childhood, 1,000 private calculations resolving into one. She touched the raw grain with her fingertips, as if testing the temperature of a decision. Do you want to help me finish it? I asked. My voice held steady not because I had rehearsed it, but because the room allowed it. She nodded. No speech, only a hand reaching for sandpaper. We worked in pleasant silence, two women shaping the thing that had been paused for months. Sand, wipe, turn, repeat. The wood began to hold light. I felt my shoulders loosen, drop to where they belonged. When it was smooth enough to tempt pride, I brushed away the dust and fitted the finial onto the banister. It slid home with a sound so soft it might have been a breath completing itself. Elaine sat on the bottom stair, watching my hands. Her posture changed, as if the chair she carried everywhere had finally been set down. He would have approved, she said, eyes on the wood rather than on me. He hated leaving jobs half done. I nodded. So do I. She took out a folded paper from her purse and smoothed it on the table. It was a printed bank ledger, neat columns of numbers, annotations in her small angular handwriting. I wasn't lying about the debts, she said. I was frightened. I am not good with fear. I get decisive when I should get still. I looked at the ledger, at the sums that were real but not catastrophic. You could have told me, I said. I didn't want you to rescue me, she answered. I wanted to prove I could stand up in the wind. You did, I said, and I meant it. But you also sold our windbreak. She closed her eyes, a small contraction around a thought. I didn't realize how much of my marriage I had stored in the walls, she whispered. I wanted out from under the weight, and I pushed you out too. We sat without fixing it with words. Some wreckage blooms into quiet gardens when left alone. After a while, she stood and rinsed the teacups as if she had always been there. She wiped the counter dry with sharp, efficient strokes. The air felt less tight. I showed her the deed, not as a banner, but as a certificate of stewardship. Her thumb traced my name without ceremony. You did this legally, she said, a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. No midnight rescues. Only daylight, I said. I wanted you to come through the front door. She looked toward that door, toward the sliver of evening left at its edges. Thank you for the invitation, she said. And for the dinner. And for not making me beg forgiveness for doing what I thought I had to. I'm not interested in begging, I replied. Only in better beginnings. We walked out to the yard while there was still enough light to name colors. The lemon tree had a few fruits ripening, pores catching gold. I reached up and twisted one gently until it let go. I handed it to her. She rubbed it between her palms and lifted it to her nose with an expression I had not seen in months, maybe years. Not joy, exactly, but permission. Do you think he would like what you've done? She asked. I think he would say the house remembers us, I said. I think he'd ask for potatoes. She laughed, a sound that surprised us both, uncracked and whole. We stood there a long time, savoring the small ceremony of nothing urgent. The neighbor's porch lights came on in an uneven wave. Somewhere a radio played a song so old it had become shy. Before she left, Elaine placed the ledger back in her purse. She looked at the banister as if checking the latch on a gate. I can contribute to the taxes, she said carefully. Not because you need it. Because I want to have a share in what stays. Okay, I said. We'll write down the arrangement. We will be exact and kind. She nodded, and when she stepped onto the porch, she hesitated. I will bring over the box of photographs next time, she added. You should have them. Or we should have them here. Here, I said. Let them live where they learn to breathe. After she was gone, I washed the dishes and set them in the rack with distances between them small enough to feel companionable. I walked through the rooms, turning off lights in a sequence that made sense to my feet. In the hallway, I ran my hand over the finial. It was warm now, holding our work. I imagined the wood remembering the last strokes of sandpaper, remembering my father's intention and our completion. A house is not a shrine, I thought. It's a tool for making ordinary days bearable and the hard ones survivable. Morning found me at the kitchen table with coffee and a notebook. Sun pooled on the floor in practice geometry. I wrote new lists, simple and unambitious. Fix the screen door so it closes like a good sentence. Oil the hinges so they sing under their breath. Plant mint near the fence so Mr. Singh can take some without ceremony. Pick lemons for the neighbor's iced tea. I plan to write to the teachers overseas, a photo of the finished banister attached, a thank you for tending a place they had to leave. Before I began the day, I walked to the pantry door with a pencil and pressed my back to the wood. I marked my height, not because I expected to grow, but because I had. I wrote the date next to the line in my neatest script. I stood for a long time looking at that small proof of a long road. The house called me by name again, quiet as a handshake. The air felt clean. I placed the lemon we had picked in a bowl and watched the morning steady itself around it. My grief was still there, but it had put on work clothes. In the measured hush, I felt the kind of peace that asks nothing, the kind you enter by the front door without kneeling. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.